chapter 13, sections 1 through 3. All right, so we need to move on from Greece and start talking about the founding of Rome, eventually leading here into the Roman Empire eventually. So we will start off here with Italy. Italy is a peninsula in the Mediterranean Sea. It's commonly referred to as shaped like a boot, and it's kind of kicking the island of Sicily down there. And on the west coast of Italy is the mouth of the Tiber River. And Rome was founded on the hill called Palatine. Rome will eventually become the center of the world's largest empire, the world's greatest empire. The Romans had a legend about the founding of their city. So if you remember back when we talked about, the Greeks, and we talked about the Trojans and Troy, the Trojan horse, all that stuff. So when Troy fell, the gods told Aeneas, who was a Trojan prince. So Troy's fallen, Aeneas is told to move west, and he will eventually go to Italy. And he joined there with the Latins that were already in Italy. About 800 BC, a Latin princess is going to have twin sons. The god Mars was the father. So Mars fathers twin sons with a Latin princess. The princess was punished, though, because she had vowed to never have kids. The twin sons were Romulus and Remus. And they will be taken and left on the banks of the Tiber River to die. Because, again, the princess had vowed never to have kids. Well, a wolf is going to find Romulus and Remus and cares for them. And then eventually a shepherd is going to kill the wolf and finds these babies. When the babies grow up, they decide to build a city on the Tiber River. And the gods were to decide which of them will rule the city. So each man, Romulus and Remus, went to the top of different hills to wait for a sign. 12 vultures are going to fly over the Palatine Hill, which was Romulus's hill. And so he was now claimed to be the king. Romulus and Remus will fight. Romulus kills Remus, and Romulus is going to name his city Rome. So that is the legend on how the Rome was founded.
Romulus is notorious as the founding hero of Rome. He is the son of Mars, the god of war in Roman mythology, and the legendary Rhea Silvia. When he was a baby, Romulus and his brother Remus were thrown into the Tiber River. But thanks to the god's intervention, the babies were protected and raised by a she-wolf. This she-wolf adopted the boys as if they were its offspring. Romulus and Remus suckled the she-wolf's breasts and were able to survive. The children were found by the shepherd Faustulus, who grabbed and brought them back to the world of men. Romulus became a strong boy, and one time his brother Remus found himself in a brawl and was imprisoned. Romulus fought against his brother's captors, and after defeating them, he unshackled Remus. During this event, the two brothers became aware of their noble origin. The brothers were then given the right to found their own city. but differences between them led Remus to found his city in Aventine Hill, and Romulus founded his own in Palatine Hill. The two cities were quite close to each other, and Romulus delimited the territory of his own city. After a dispute, Remus disrespected the frontier drawn by Romulus and was killed by his brother. After this episode, Romulus understood that his city would have to be more populated. After starting to accept all kinds of people in his new settlement, the city ended up welcoming people of all kinds. But those rejected by other villages stood out from the rest. There were many bandits, deserters, and murderers. All of them were now living in the city of Romulus. Its city was populated, but most inhabitants were men. To address this issue, Romulus invited his neighbors to a feast. During the event, Romulus's men kidnapped the women of their neighbors. This episode was known as the abduction of the Sabine women. A war between the Sabines and Romans began. This bloody quarrel only came to an end due to the Sabine women, who had been abducted and were already married with Roman offspring. They negotiated peace between the two sides. Romulus ruled the city of Rome for many years. The Roman capital was built during his government, as well as the First Legion, and the institution of the Roman Republic. At the end of his life, Romulus was grabbed by the gods and turned into a deity. The founder of Rome started to be worshipped as a warrior god named Quirinus. Romulus was a man of many feats, but he will forever be remembered as the founder of Rome, the Eternal City.
Around 1000 BC, Latins begin to settle on Palatine. By about 776 BC, the population of this settlement on Palatine was around 1,000 people. Most of them were farmers, farming wheat and barley. And then around 800 BC, Etruscans are going to settle in Etruria. This was north of the Latin village on the Palatine. They borrow the alphabet of the Greeks. They spoke their own unique language. The Etruscans had a strong army. They learned a lot from the Greeks. They used a very similar phalanx. But the Etruscans are going to have a quote unquote weapon that no one else had. And that is going to be shoes made of heavy leather. And they're going to have better footing on rough ground, which with better footing, you get an advantage in the battle. The Etruscans grow rich and powerful, and their cities begin to grow. And they are going to, by 600 BC, they're going to dominate all of northern Italy, including the Latin villages on the Palatine. If we look at the daily life of these people, they enjoyed playing games and having a good time. They played and watched sports. They loved music and dancing. Most of the dancing that they did was done to please the gods. The women enjoyed a lot of freedom. They took part in public celebrations. They could own property. The Etruscan women, they had more freedom than the Latin or Greek women did. As far as the Etruscan religion goes, they had many gods. They were polytheistic. They borrowed many of the Greek gods. Now, originally, they worshipped outside on platforms, but the Latins will build temples containing many sculptures. And they believe different gods ruled different provinces or sections of the universe. You had humans in the center facing south towards the gods of nature and earth. So the humans are in the middle, they're facing south. The south was towards the gods of nature and earth. On the west was death and the underworld. And on the east were the heavens. Partly think about it. The sun comes up in the east and it sets. The final setting is in the west. The Etruscans, when they built their cities and their temples, they would face east, face the heavens. They believed humans were powerless before the gods. Humans desired to please the gods. If you're going to please the gods, though, you got to figure out what the gods want. What's their will? Which brings us to soothsayers. These were people who could predict events. And these soothsayers, they would read omens or signs of what's to happen. Some of the soothsayers would use livers of sacrificed animals, and they would read those. Some studied thunder and lightning. Some studied the flights of birds. But you listen to the soothsayers to figure out what you needed to do to please the gods. (616 BC), Licinius Tarquinius becomes the new ruler of Rome. He was actually the first Etruscan to rule Rome. Before him had been Latins. We're not really sure how he took power from the Latin king, but he does. And his dynasty, or his line of rulers, are going to last for more than 100 years. So the Etruscans are now ruling the Palatine, the Latins, Rome. The Etruscans were more culturally advanced than the Latins, and they're going to make many contributions to later Roman civilization. For example, one contribution the Etruscans are going to make was in the area of architecture. They used arches, in building bridges and stuff like that. And their use of the arch, you're going to see a lot of that with the Romans. They lay the foundation for Rome's sewer system. So Rome's sewer system is going to drain to the swamp below the Palatine, getting the waste and the nastiness out of there. As far as language goes, the Etruscans had borrowed the Greek alphabet. They had made some changes, but they had mostly borrowed the Greek alphabet. The Romans will borrow the Etruscan alphabet. Another area, there's 1, 2, 3. A fourth area is in some of their customs. Etruscans, they would have enslaved people fight at funerals. And the Romans will eventually model their gladiator games after them. Sometimes it'd be man versus man, or man versus animal, or women and dwarfs, or women and animals, or dwarfs and animals, and all sorts of combinations. Another custom was this idea of a triumph. So that way it was almost like a parade-like welcome for a hero returning home for battle. Another custom was their fasces, which is a bundle of rods bound around an axe. It was a symbol of a ruler's power to either beat you, hence the rods, or to execute you, the axe. And a fifth contribution that the Etruscans are going to make to Roman civilization was in the area of religious beliefs. The idea of soothsayers, the Romans will use. Gods with human forms, the Romans will use. The Etruscans built the first temple on Capitoline, one of the 7 hills that Rome was going to end up being on. Today, This hill of Capitoline is actually the center of Rome's municipal or city government, even today.